Welcome everyone to our webinar, A Look at Self-Care and Mental Wellbeing During COVID-19, organized by the McGill Young Alumni, IV.A. My name is Camille Abed, and I will be your moderator for this event. 2020 is already coming to an end and brought its fair share of ups and downs. And because the MOA is committed to fostering connection and community amongst recent McGill alumni, I believe it was a good time to further the conversation on how we are all truly doing. With the harder task of not knowing what to plan in a time of usual celebrations with loved ones, the uncertainty can feel paralyzing and the lack of control can be heavy on the morale. Know that you're not alone. And our speakers today, both trained as clinical psychologists and leading figures in their field, are here today to help us navigate those waters and, most importantly, take good care of ourselves. The speakers will share the floor for a total of 40 minutes, and the rest of the hour will be spent on answering your questions directly. Dr. Dunkley, Dr. Khoury, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Dunkley, you're a senior researcher at the Lady Davis Institute and the Jewish General Hospital. You're also an associate professor of psychiatry at McGill. Your research has examined stress and coping mechanisms that explain how perfectionism triggers and maintains the stress and lower resilience in daily life. Dr. Khoury, you're an assistant professor at the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology at McGill University. You're also a therapist and the head of the McGill Mindfulness Research Lab, where you have been conducting research on advancing the theory and applications of mindfulness and compassion. Thank you again for joining us today. Dr. Dunkley, the floor is yours.
So my talk is on perfectionism, stress, coping, mindfulness, and self-compassion in the context of COVID-19. So perfectionism has been on the rise in young people over the last 3 decades. And it's thought this is in response to neoliberal governance in the United States, Britain, Canada, which is it's kind of a meritocracy where people's worth is dependent on them being productive, achieving, and so forth. And if you don't achieve, then you're kind of cast by the wayside. So there's that kind of belief ingrained in our culture, and that's led to a lot of perfectionism that's increased in young people over the last 3 decades. What are the costs of perfectionism? It's associated with a wide range of pathology, such as depression, anxiety, eating disorders. And it's also been found to have a negative impact on therapeutic process and outcome over time. So given their vulnerability to distress, it's important to consider perfectionistic individuals' vulnerability as well as resilience in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So over the past 4 decades, there's been similar specific cognitive personality vulnerability styles that are presumed to increase vulnerability to depression, namely self-criticism, autonomy, perfectionism in the 1990s. And this has really received increasing attention. And out of these, many different measures have emerged these 2 higher order factors of perfectionism, personal standards and self-critical perfectionism. So personal standards is a tendency to set high standards and goals for the self, and it's a motivation, an act of striving to attain perfection. And in and of itself, that's not a bad thing. It's often not related to pathology. The maladaptive aspects of perfectionism are more closely related to what we call self-critical perfectionism. And that's a tendency to engage in harsh self-scrutiny and evaluation, to be worried about making mistakes, being unable to derive satisfaction performance, as well as being concerned about others' criticism and disapproval. And this factor has a strong, consistent relation with distress. So nowadays, an example of the focus on evaluation in our society is often fought through social media. So this is, all I want for Christmas is 100 more likes a few years ago by Andrew Potter, who was a former professor at McGill. But essentially, the battle for status and recognition and liking is fought through social media a lot of the time in the form of Facebook likes, Twitter, Instagram followers. How many do you have? you'll notice whenever you receive any kind of service, you always get a survey for evaluating how the survey was, and the person hopes to give 9 or 10 out of 10s. So related to this is what we call a perfectionism diathesis stress model, which proposes that perfectionists are most vulnerable to achievement-related stressors related to failure, loss of control, and worrying about criticism from others or rejection from others. And these are results from a study in 2015 where we found that the top graph says basically if you're high on self-critical perfectionism and you're high on achievement-related chronic stress, so that's things like unemployment, you have the highest levels of depression over 1 year relative if you're low on self-critical perfectionism and have high achievement-related stress. There isn't a similarly high, it's normal. As well, self-critical perfectionists being vulnerable to interpersonal chronic stress, such that a year later, if you're high in self-critical perfectionism, high on interpersonal chronic stress, you had higher levels of depression. Now, an article we published last month in the Journal of Counseling Psych found that self-critical perfectionism combined with lower perceived control over daily events over 14 days was related to higher levels of depressive and anxious symptoms over 4 years. And this was found in 152 community adults. So what are the implications of perfectionism diathesis stress model for the COVID-19 global health crisis? There was a really nice discussion by Fleet and Hewitt in the spring, which basically said individuals with higher self-critical perfectionism will have heightened vulnerability to economic suffering and or having a business that fails, uncertainty or being in uncontrollable situations, feeling trapped and constrained with no apparent means of escape, family situations with role requirements that add to the demands already being placed on them, working from home in isolated conditions that leave them with few options, as well as loneliness and separation anxiety, because they're more likely to view this as a personal failing of their own. This was an interesting article. It was in the Gazette, published in the Montreal Gazette last Saturday. And it talks about this American surfing legend, Hamilton, with a metaphor, his metaphor of riding waves in the ocean to riding the COVID waves. And in the COVID context, it involves, everyday. Okay, I just lost my, sorry. Just disappeared here. There we go. Sorry about that. So in the COVID context, the wave is fraught with decisions like how risky to send your kid to school, to eat in a restaurant, to travel for a holiday. And this is a quote from Hamilton: "Nature, that's some discipline S right there. The ocean has real discipline, a reliability and consistency within all that's perceived as chaotic." Now, we've tried to do something similar in understanding people, the complexity of people. And through that, we use daily diary methods, which are assessments that take place in people's natural environments. There's a reduced recall bias, and there's repeated assessments that allow for examination of change and variation in stress, coping, and affect over time. And we've conducted these studies with university students, community adults, and depressed patients, and hundreds of them. And out of that, we get thousands of daily reports. And from that, we try to harvest a complex understanding of people's stress, coping, and mood patterns in daily life. And we've taken these studies. These are published back. The first one was 2003 with university students at McGill, actually. Then 2014 with Community Dollars, 2017. We've taken the results of these studies and now we've turned it into an intervention. So we tested these complex models with these large samples, and now we're applying it to individuals' daily life and answering questions for people. What increases your negative mood? So here's a COVID example. We're actually running this study right now with university students, and we do this feedback intervention over Zoom. So here's an example of an event. I felt very lonely, spent my birthday by myself because of COVID and because I'm single. So we see, okay, this was a day where sadness was higher than usual for this participant. Their stress levels were higher. They engage in more avoidant coping, so kind of giving up on things. They blame themselves more, focused on their inadequacies, and they perceive more criticism from others. As well, they perceive less control over this event. And then we draw connections amongst these different things that might be connected to sadness. So this person, okay, on this day, they perceive more criticism, they blame themselves more, and that's connected to them giving up. As well, they perceive less control, and that's connected to more avoidance. And all of this is linked to the higher levels of stress and increase in sadness on this day. And then we contrast that with a day where they felt less sad. So on this day, it was a 20 out of 100 instead of a 60 out of 100. So a decrease in sadness, a decrease in stress, no avoidant coping, no self-blame, no perceived criticism, and complete perceived control. And so then again, we summarize. So on this day, you perceived less criticism, blamed yourself less, you felt more in control. So you avoided less and experienced less stress and less sadness. And this is kind of a system that we're trying to, much similar metaphor as the wave, where it might seem overwhelming, but if you can break it down into these little like these specific variables that are basically multiple entry points, where if you can change any one of these things, lower stress, lower avoidance, lower self-blame, that will have an impact on reducing sadness. To use a real world example, this is one of the big debates out of COVID was, when were we ready to reopen schools? And the government's thinking is, and as well as the pediatricians of Quebec, is the longer we hold kids out of school, the longer they're going to have social development problems, experience the effects of isolation will get worse, as well as the impact on the economy will get worse. And one of the things that people were resistant was they felt a lack of control, that they're taking a risk by sending their kids back to school, a physical health risk. So you can see Legault kind of trying to reassure here, nothing is perfect, nothing in life is 100%. And of course, there's criticism from other premiers. I'm not going to put our children in a crowded classroom. I'm just not going to do it. So these factors that could trigger a more avoidant response. Another example is my mother-in-law was having some chest pains, and so St. Mary's told her to come in for a stress test. And but then the night before a stress test, there was a COVID outbreak at St. Mary's. So I went to pick up my mother-in-law at her home the next day, and my brother-in-law comes out and wasn't going to let her come. And he's saying it was just too risky. And but I said, well, it's a controlled risk. And he's like, well, can it be? So you think it's risk-free? I said, no, not risk-free, but there's also risk of not sending to the hospital in terms of her having a heart problem and that. And So it's just a risk evaluation. And as well, there's unforeseen risks. So when I dropped her off, she didn't walk to enter the hospital. She didn't walk around the sidewalk. Instead, she goes up this muddy hill to the St. Mary's entrance. So she could have rolled down the hill or slipped and broke something. So all these kind of this stressful, upsetting situation. These are recent findings that were actually published on Sunday. So I'm not normally, this is an atypical month or week in terms of publications, but yeah, this was published on Sunday, these findings. And essentially, if you're a self-critical perfectionist and you don't engage in mindfulness, this group had the highest levels of general distress. And whereas if you did use mindfulness, that reduces the levels of general distress and anxious arousal. So this would be things like taking a distance from your distressing thoughts and not reacting to them. So and you know, I can relate to this myself, as you know, every day when I write, I often have self-doubts, but I choose not to react to them, and you know, I persist even in the face of self-doubts. Another example is observing. So being focused on your senses and not on your automatic ruminative tendencies. So another example of observing is just even being at your computer and being with the mouse and clicking and or typing and feeling the feelings of your fingers on the keyboard. There's little informal ways you can do mindfulness, and apparently that's a protective thing for self-critical perfectionists. As well, we found that higher self-compassion was linked to a lower level of general distress and anxious arousal over 2 years. Whereas if you weren't self-compassionate, these were the people with the highest levels of general distress and anxious arousal. So that would be things like self-kindness or common humanity. So common humanity is you're not alone in this. You're not the only, for people who are alone at home, we know it's part of the human condition right now. And rather than judging yourself for being single, you can be self-kind. And if you're able to do that, that can also be protective as well. So coming back to Hamilton, he talks about how these are things that can be taught, like breathing and being comfortable with discomfort, being uncomfortable, and looking at all different kinds of waves, ocean waves, brain waves, sound waves, and just seeing the discipline in there. And through observation, you can learn how to break things down and deal with pieces at a time. Now, one thing we did not find in that study was mindfulness and self-compassion. It did not protect self-critical perfectionists against what's called anhedonic depression. So it seems like mindfulness, self-compassion are good to dealing with distress, but there's this whole other activation component of mood and depression that's important. So we not only assess reducing negative mood, we also want to increase people's positive mood and good functioning. So this is from a student. I guess he sounds like he's a biology major and doing experiments and just encountering problems with that. But this was a day where he had higher positive mood of 65, problem focused coping 79 out of 100. So that's engaging. Perceived control 17. So that's elevated but not too high. Positive reframing, looking at it as an opportunity for growth. And also perceiving support from others. So it seems even though he had some stress, he had these positive things going, especially social support and problem-focused coping. And similar to before, we try to draw connections. So this person perceived support was available. So he's more likely to engage in positive reinterpretation, perceive more control, and problem-focused cope, and all this was linked to positive mood. However, on another day, it was a day when Montreal became a red zone and didn't know what's going to happen to his studies, his lab work, no uncertainty, no news from the university nor the hospital, what's going to happen. So this was a day where lower positive mood, lower problem-focused coping, lower perceived control, lower positive reinterpretation, and lower perceived social support. So we can again give a summary of that. So on this day, you perceived less support from others. You didn't see it as an opportunity to grow, less control, less problem-focused coping, less positive mood. And similarly, you just similar to the negative mood, this is kind of a multiple entry point system where if you can change any one of these things, it's going to affect a change in your positive mood. So to give an example, this was an article in the Gazette from Professor Harley. And well, one, he says self-awareness. So kind of what I'm talking about with that diagrams, those diagrams that lay everything out. But he talks about increasing control. And that can be such as engaging in social distancing and good hand hygiene. But it can also mean trying to avoid catastrophic thoughts about the pandemic. So that would lower stress. But as well as taking breaks, setting reasonable goals, breaking up tasks, those would all be ways to increase control in a day where someone has less energy. Now this is another, so as you can tell, I read the newspaper a fair bit, but part of it is there's just these fascinating stories. So this was from Saturday or within the last few days about this concert tour manager who was out of work, obviously, because he couldn't travel. And he turned that into a skateboarding business with his 2 kids. And he just talks about what he really hopes is just the life lesson this can teach his children, that you see dad out of work, his whole industry is out of work, but then they're seeing that when the going gets tough, you can turn it around and make it work for you. And you look at opportunities in hard times to switch it around. You never know, it's hard, but life is hard. That's just an amazing gift to his kids. So to summarize, to reduce distress, you want to lower daily stress, lower avoidant coping, lower self-blame, lower perceived criticism, increase mindfulness, increase self-compassion. That's one question. But you want to also try to bolster resilience. And for those things, it's receiving more social support, engaging in more positive reinterpretation, increasing perceived control, increasing problem-focused coping. Any one of these things or multiple things can help. I like this slogan, after COVID, let's not go back to normal. So there's a lot that I personally think we were kind of on a path to certain self-destruction before COVID, and we needed something really to shake us. And even if it's tough in the short term. So positive things that came out of this was Black Lives Matter. This movement would not likely have gathered momentum. The economy, maybe we switch from being this hyper-competitive, profit-focused economic model to something that's more sustainable, like a resilience, convergent economy. So that would be things like eating and buying local, and as well the environment. Closing of industries led to cleaner air in the short term, but may well have positive effects in the long term. Working people maybe will work from home more, and all these changes are promising for our biosphere. Just to acknowledge the the funding agencies that have supported this work over the years. And with that, I'm happy to pass it over to Bassam, and thank you for listening. So I'll stop share.
Thanks a lot, David, for this fantastic presentation.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. You said the floor for my presentation. That's
okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Look forward to your presentation, Bassam.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today to take a bit from what David was saying and talk more about the self-help strategies. So let's start a bit by looking at the impact of COVID-19, specifically on youth. As I know, most of you are young people, student, or just recently graduated. So certainly stress increased a lot with COVID for multiple reasons. As David was talking, there's uncertainty. People tend to make plans, trips. They tend to plan things that they want to do. With COVID, most of these plans were put on hold. So people were not able even to plan for things they can do. There's lack of connection and feeling of loneliness, specifically among young people. And I work with students every day, and they feel more and more disconnected. The lack of sense of control, and David was talking about it a few minutes before, and feeling that we lost freedom. For example, people used to decide to go out or to party or to gather somewhere or to go to a restaurant or to do those things. They can decide on the spot to do something. Now everything is, it's felt as somebody else is deciding on them. If they decide to do something, they cannot do it because there's the government or whatever is perceived is deciding on them. And there's disruption of adaptive coping strategies. Many use the gym, for example, physical exercise, as a way to cope. With the closure of a gym, it's now not possible. So these adaptive strategies that are positive are now less attainable. There's disruption of structure. Many young individuals thrive better when they have a day that is full of things. So they're going to work, going to gym, in the evening seeing friends, and after that having time alone. But many will tell me, now I don't have any more the structure, as I work from home, I do everything from home, I don't go to the gym. If I do exercise, I will exercise at home. So there is no more this kind of healthy structure. And many will sleep more hours or sleep in the day or work in the night. So this causes a lot of this disruption in the structure. And people are also afraid of COVID. Even though young people tend to be less afraid of COVID, still, I mean, some young people have health conditions and can be afraid of COVID. And many also are sensitive that they are afraid of giving it to someone else. So all of that put a lot of stress on everyone, specifically on youth, young adults. Now beyond COVID, which is already huge, I mean, young adults face a lot of challenges. And I worked a lot with young adults since a long time ago. So there is the idea of finishing school, going to job, finding a job, which is extremely demanding, starting to establish an identity, independence. It seems easy, but it's extremely important and difficult task to do, being independent from the parents and family, not only physically and moving out, but also emotionally and even more deeply on the level of identity and finding such identity. Finances, I mean, much more basic things like debts. Some students have debts and they need to find ways to financially it works for them. We had specifically in 2020 race relationships, and I know how much young people are sensitive to the subject matter, and I know how much it impacted them. So these tensions existed in 2020. they went to another level, and young people are more impacted by that. Even though there are good things coming from it, as David was mentioning. Climate crisis, certainly it's not new. I mean, it's not new for scientists, no wonder, but also we are seeing it's increasing. And again, young people are much more sensitive and aware of it for good reasons. The future belongs to them, and it also has an impact on young adults. Social media, even though it's a place of connection with other young people, it can also cause stress. There's a lot of comparison, perfectionism, as David was saying. Social media is a place for these activities, as they compare their body image, they compare everything on social media. So as it is positive in some senses, it can cause a lot of stress. Going back briefly to present the stress vulnerability model, also David in his presentation touched on it. So what that means, it means that we all come with vulnerabilities. It's not, all of us, we have genes that are not perfect. We have history, and we went through development, and maybe we had difficult events. So all of us have some vulnerabilities, okay? Now, what happens when you add the stress on top of it? Hey, where you can reach a level where people start to see symptoms. What that means, symptoms of anxiety, depression, distress, even suicidal ideation. So vulnerability alone, normally it's okay. Stress, it starts to add to it. Now, if you have stress, and I put COVID stress as additional stress, and maybe young adult have also other stressor. So when you add these things, they combine with each other, and you can hit this threshold, the red line, and when you start to see these clinical depression, clinical anxiety, and so forth. Now, what to do when in distress? And that's an important thing I want to say. So if the level of distress is low, meaning, okay, you're having hard time, but you are able to eat, to sleep, to work, you are able to do things, you are able to do activities, to socialize, and you're having some hard time, at that moment, you might say, okay, let me talk to a friend, or if I may remember, just kind to have a space to talk about my things. In this low level of stress and distress, it's okay. Now, on the opposite side, if you are feeling extremely sad, unable even to experience pleasure in things, unable even to do things that you used to do, unable to work or to concentrate or to sleep well or to eat well, if these basic things are disrupted in your life, I don't think, not only I don't think, I think it's not a good idea to see I can talk to a friend or family member. It's not enough. You would need professional help, meaning a medical doctor, a psychologist, any other mental health professional. You would need that. It's important, specifically if you are going towards suicidal ideation or more in that direction. It's important, and I would insist that it's extremely important to seek professional help. Now, between those two and with those two, you can do self-help. And are we focusing on that today? It's not. It's my focus, but to understand that sometimes it's important to seek help, and it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. So what about self-help? Let me talk about self-help. What we can do to self-help, and what David said in his presentation also hinted to many of these things that I would be saying today. So that's extremely helpful. So it starts by basic hygiene. Before moving to these big things, what is basic hygiene? Is meaning eating, sleeping, exercising. Meaning eating well. Eating, it's not about the quantity you eat, but eating in a sound way. For example, if you are eating one meal a day, it's not a sign of things going well. When you say I eat only in the evening, this is a bad sign. Let's put it that way. Sleeping, if you start like sleeping few hours a night, this is not a good sign. You need to sleep enough hours, and it need to be kind of a good schedule. If one night you sleep at 10 p.m. and one night at 4 a.m., if it's exception, it happens, but if it's always dysregulated, it has a huge impact on mood, on anxiety, on distress level. Exercising, we all need exercise. It's not about gym. I know gym are closed anyway, but at least to move physically. Even if you go for a walk, whatever is to have some physical movement, because we need that. Humans and animals need to move. So these are basic things that are needed to be at minimum healthy. From there, also to commit to daily activities that make you feel better. And if you are binging the whole day on Netflix or on video gaming, these are also bad signs. You are not going in the right direction. And I'll talk more about mindfulness and compassion, as they are my keen interest, and David mentioned them a bit before. So I will go more in depth about these two important strategies in self-help. So what is mindfulness? I can tell you, I can talk about it the whole day, but I don't want to bore you about that. So let's go simple. It's a skilled ability. So that's important to know. Why it's important? Meaning you can learn it. It doesn't come to you from somewhere. Yes, people are different in terms of their trait or disposition to mindfulness. It's true, and it's important, but you can learn it. It's an ability. It's a skill you can learn to be more mindful. What it involves? It involves many things. It involves your mind, but also involves in more than your mind, your body. And that's what I'll be focusing a lot, your body. You need to use your body to be mindful. And it involves your interactions with things around you, with others, with the environment, with nature. So it involves your mind, your body, and the connection with whatever is around you. What are some of the components of mindfulness? And I'm not saying these are the only components. There are debate around that, but I'm at least suggesting these are among the important components I teach. One of these components is detachment of thinking. It seems kind of strange, and it seems people say, okay, meaning I need to stop thinking. No, I wish I can tell you from experience and from science, you cannot stop your mind. It's not like we have this ability to stop the mind unless you take some drugs or you engage in other things. So you cannot stop the mind, but you can change how you connect or deal with the mind. And the basic thing when we say detachment from thoughts is no fighting, no grasping. You don't fight what's going on in your mind, but you don't grasp it. You don't get interested in it and start do stuff with it. No fighting, no grasping. Look at your thoughts as clouds in the sky. They come, they go. Okay, so that's extremely important. And this is a skill ability to develop. It's not like it comes to you suddenly. You try to detach. You stop fighting your thinking. You don't grasp your thinking. You observe. And David was mentioning observing. You observe. Interesting. I have these thoughts in my mind. And you state that. No judging. Direction of attention. That's one of the most important and maybe difficult component also. How you are able to direct attention. Because when you let attention does its own thing, it can go all the ways, wherever it wants. It wanders on things and it gets you into trouble. So you want to direct your attention. You don't want to get caught up in your thinking in mind. Where you can direct your attention, for example, on your body, sensation, physical sensation, as simple as that. Or breathing, for example. When you focus on your breathing in and breathing out. External, you can focus on contemplating external things, a tree, an animal, a piece of art. But I'm saying contemplating, not judging, not analyzing. It's a state of contemplation, observation. Okay? Acceptance of feeling and sensation, it's an important one and might seem easy, it's not. And I think David talked about it in the opposite of non-avoidance. We talk about non-avoidance, or acceptance is non-avoidance. Meaning if I have a feeling, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, a sensation, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, I accept to be with it. Even more, I would say, I would invite it, come to me. I have anxiety, come to me, let me feel you. Come close. I want to feel you completely. Can I feel you in or in my body. Once you are able to feel any sensation, including anxiety, which is not fun to feel, I know, all over you, from your head to your toe, come to me, let me feel you completely. Come to me. At some point, it will decrease, and it will let you, and will go away. When you fight it, it sticks around. When you accept it, it goes away. So remember that. How to practice mindfulness. So among other practices, David hinted also rapidly to some informal practices. I will give you idea of those two types, major types, the formal practices and informal practices. What is formal? Formal meaning you are giving time to the practice. It's not happening throughout other activities. You're giving 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever you want. But you're saying this time is for mindfulness, and the most practice is meditation, focusing on meditation as being the most known, most established, most practiced type of mindfulness. Among the practice of meditation are sitting meditation. So meaning you are sitting and meditating. It's as simple as that. And now within sitting meditation, there are multiple types. You can go more and more. The most known in terms of calming the mind would be meditation on the breath. What that means? It means you are directing your attention towards the sensation of breathing in and breathing out. Okay? You are not analyzing your breathing, you are not judging it, you are not painting, you are just directing your attention to the sensation of breathing in and breathing out. John Kabat-Zinn put it in these words: I'm surfing with my breathing. I'm surfing with my breathing. I'm being with my breathing. It's not about changing it. It's not about making it perfect. It's not about counting it. It's just being with it. Okay. Another strategy that is extremely effective in terms of anchoring in the body in sleep. Actually, I give it to many of patients that I see who are having hard time to sleep is body scanning. It's simple, meaning you are scanning, you are going throughout your body from your head to your toes, or on the opposite side, and trying to feel sensations throughout your body. So again, it's not analyzing, it's not judging, it's not thinking, it's feeling your sensation every single part of your body. It seems easy, it's not that easy, because you might notice that some parts of your body do not feel at all. It's numb. It's okay, you are not used to feel these parts, but you continue with patience until you feel them more and more. Walking meditation, it's practiced a lot in teaching of meditation, meaning you are walking and meditating at the same time. I'll have a slide a bit after where I show also about walking meditation. I put there's an important role of guidance, meaning if you are starting, if it's novice for you, it's something you didn't know before, I strongly recommend some guidance, meaning you need someone to guide you. Now, someone can be an app. I think many of you know apps. I don't want to mention names because there are multiple apps. Just you can go meditation app and you can have a bunch of them. There are on the internet, there are classes online. They used to have in Montreal many in-person groups of meditation. I assume that now with the pandemic, maybe there are not there, but online you find groups actually. And the easy thing, people are using apps and other things to guide them specifically at the beginning. Now, the informal part is just integrating it in your daily life. It's not setting time to meditate as you are, for example, taking a shower, and you are able to direct your attention to the sensation of water on your body. Or you are eating. Eating is very powerful, and you're able to direct your attention to the sensation of eating, the taste, the smell. So being able to be present in the body, in the sensation, in the present moment, whatever activity you are doing. How to start meditating? I took it from Google. It shows you a bit the position and guides you a bit about the details. I think the next step maybe it's easier. The idea when you are sit, and I'm not a meditation instructor, but to give you just a little note about sitting meditation. So the idea that you are upright position, that you are not You are kind of very vertical. Your spine is vertical. Your head is a bit like pulled towards the ceiling. You have a position, my Buddhist teacher would say, a position of dignity, a position that you are on the top of a mountain and you're looking down. There is a sense of being anchored, of being stable, of being balanced. It's important, and I'm going to tell you, and there are some studies now trying to look at the position, how it contributes to the effect, but this position has an impact on your state of mind, that your arms are rested. Your eyes either closed or at an open gaze towards the floor. And you are bringing your attention gently to the sensation of breathing in and breathing out. So the position is important. Take your time to be in this kind rested position, vertical position. Whether you are on a cushion using lotus or half lotus position or on a chair, both are okay as long as you are very anchored in your body, balanced and anchored. Walking meditation, I was said, many people practice it in meditation classes. They do it inside sometimes when we used to have classes, and certainly it's fun to do it outside. If you have the chance to go to a retreat and you are in beautiful nature, you can do it outside. Again, the idea here is that you are directing your attention to the body weight, your body lifting from one foot to another. So once you are stepping, you are witnessing and feeling the sensation of changing your body weight from one foot to another foot. So certainly you are walking so slowly and you are present in all sensations in your body. And eating, I was also mentioning a bit before, so you can do it in eating. There is a start for that. Body scan, I already talked about it. I will not go to yoga. I'm not the most yogi, but the idea of yoga is the idea of being aware of movement of the body. It's not about aerobics and doing the best position. I gave here some positions just for fun. Don't try to do them necessarily. It's not about that. It's about a presence in the body. It's about awareness of the movement of the body. And here's the eating meditation I was talking about. There's a practice in Zen Buddhism. They will spend 1 hour to drink a cup of tea. It's like every single sensation is attended fully, completely, slowly. So maybe try to eat and to be aware of the smell, of the taste, of every single sensation involved in eating. Today, it's actually used a lot in eating disorders. I want a bit to talk about the 9 attitudes in mindfulness meditation practice from Jon Kabat-Zinn. These are taught by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who, I mean, maybe you don't know who Jon Kabat-Zinn. I need to talk about Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is the person that is brought meditation and mindfulness to the main Western science. So the first one is beginner attitude. So whether you are someone who practiced meditation since a long time or new, every time you practice meditation, you come as it's a new practice for me. You don't come with some expectation or kind of a model in your head. You come with a new practice every time. You don't judge your practice. That scares a practice. You accept whatever comes to surface. Feelings, sensations, memories, everything's okay. Letting go. You let go things. You are so much grasping on, including the ego. The ego causes suffering. So once you are meditating, let go everything. And trusting your body. Your body knows how to handle things more than your mind. If you trust your body in your meditation, you allow it to handle things. To be patient with yourself. It's not easy to commit to meditation. So be patient. And don't try to strive for something. It's not about achievement or perfectionism. It's about just being. It's an act of love towards yourself. So be grateful and be generous. Rapid is a model of meditation depths, we call it. It's just to show you a bit the stages that you might go through them. And I say might, just to say it's not like all scientists and all people in meditation will agree on that. But there are some common themes around that. That stage one is common, is that people will experience difficulty in starting meditating. Okay, I feel bored. Why I'm doing that? What is I can use my time to do something more useful, more active. So this stage of like feeling unease. You are sitting on the cushion, you are there, you intended to meditate, and you are not wanting to do it. It's normal. Don't fight it. If you are patient enough with yourself, it will go away. And you will go the stage of relaxation, which is a state that people know. I mean, many activities might induce relaxation. So you are feeling calm, in peace, but you are not still meditating, actually. You are relaxed. Now, if you are tired, you might sleep. It happened to me too. For that, we do meditation as much as we can in the morning. It's not bad. I mean, if you go to sleep, you relax it, you slept, but you didn't actually meditate, but you relax it. Now, if you continue, you persist and continue, so our time, you start in the stage of concentration. What kind of you thinking having less weight, which is extremely nice. And the activity of the mind is carrying less weight. It's like coming light. And you start to have this kind of deep feeling inside you. Some insight might come to surface. You feel centered. There's more understanding. Things that you tend to fight, you are not fighting and understanding them. And even though if you continue more, you start to experience very powerful, not maybe everyone, but it's possible, it happened, that you experience very, very powerful positive emotions, such as love, devotion, connectedness with others. You can experience intense positive emotions, which might be addictive. This is another question. And some would describe it as meditators as on the top explaining a state of non-duality, as you are part of everything around you, where the cognitive processes will cease completely, which is certainly state what Buddhism called as nirvana. But anyway, I'm not asking you to go there. Now, in terms of practice benefits, we have seen studies showing better psychological well-being, better self-regulation. Self-regulation include emotional regulation, include also cognitive regulation, not seeing black and white, for example. It also include behavior regulation, for example, not acting impulsively about things. Better sleep, there are plenty of studies we have seen on that. Better focus and concentration, even with I think studies now showing these results, and certainly on interpersonal level. And that's maybe what people didn't do a lot of studies like that, but now we are seeing studies going and showing a better interpersonal bonds with others. In decreased stress and worry, I think also David talked about that, ruminations and mood disturbance. Now, how to start a practice? That's always a question. You start to experience with different practices. If you never meditated, it's okay. We talked about practices, and I will show you there are different practices. We talked about sitting meditation, walking meditation, eating meditation, doing body scan, doing meditation on the breath. So there are multiple types of meditation. You can try as much as you want, just to see which one maybe fit you more. Because some people love body scan, but when you tell them meditate on the breath, it doesn't work for them. And you need to cultivate this state of patience and non-judgment. And once one or more work it for you, keep doing them again and again until you cultivate the state of being. So here I'm showing you that there are multiple practices. Choose whatever of them work for you. To maintain a practice of mindfulness on longer term, you need a commitment, a strong commitment, and don't use it as an add-on. It's mindfulness, and that's my take. Maybe some people will be disagree with me. It's not an add-on. It's not like a physical exercise. I'm doing 15 minutes a day. It's good. Mindfulness is a way of being. So it's bigger than add-on. It's a way of being. And a deep sense. Try to see a deep sense how mindfulness impact every aspect of your life. Your personal life, your interpersonal life. See how mindfulness impacts you. When you know how it impacts you, commitment is there. It's not hard to get commitment. I will not go in details about the brain and meditation. There's plenty of studies on that, but shortly I will tell you that meditation on longer term, I'm not talking about a couple of weeks, can change the brain structurally, like meaning areas of the brain becoming different. Like, for example, thickness of the cortex can change, and functionally, meaning integration or connection between different areas in the brain. I go rapidly to compassion. I know the time is limited, and David talked about compassion. So compassion go hand in hand with mindfulness, and compassion helps to sustain mindfulness. Mindfulness helps to sustain compassion too. So I would define it very easily and maybe quickly with these dimensions. Compassion is about how you think, and David was mentioning: are you self-critical? Do you hate? Do you judge yourself every time? The same about others. So compassion can be directed towards you or others. Do I think badly of others? Do I judge them fast? So the thinking is part of compassion. How you think, how you judge, and how you can stop judging. Feeling. Do I hate myself? I have many patients that tell me I hate myself. So certainly this is a feeling that doesn't help you to go forward. Do you hate others? So feeling of what we want in compassion, feeling of love, feeling of kindness, and David mentioned it, feeling of warmth, and that you are warm inside, and you see this picture, there's a feeling of being loved, a feeling of warmth. Acting, meaning what you do towards yourself or others. The concrete actions. You can give yourself time to take a bath and be relaxed, or to have a hot chocolate or a walk. Actions matter. Connection with others. How much you are able to lean on others when you face a need. How much you accept help from others. And how much you are able also to give that to others. How much you can use your own experience of suffering to connect with others. What I want rapidly to say, self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It's not self-pity. It's not passivity. It's not certainly egotism. It's not about ego. It's an act of self-love. So there's nothing of that, and it's an active. It's active and not passive. So you are not self-compassionate if you stay in your bed the whole day. It's not that. You are self-compassionate if you do things that are constructive and loving and helpful towards you. So it's not these. It's really an active state of mind, and it requires cultivation. So as we said about mindfulness, it is a skill ability, so can be learned. That's the good news. It's a skill ability, can be learned. Some of the practices to cultivate compassion, and I'm listing some of them. It's not the only one. Loving kindness meditation. This is a type of meditation that I would suggest to you to try it, where it aims to develop this state of compassion. It's cultivate a state of compassion inside you. Diminishing self-critical perfectionist thinking. You have David talking about it. That's the opposite of compassion. Imagery can help. What kind of imagery? Many people will bring to the imagery the feeling being with a parent who is loving, the feeling being sometimes in nature that is loving. So to bring in your heart this feeling of warmth, this feeling of being loved. Self-care action, as I was mentioning, it can be a list. You can make a list, a daily action of activities, things you can make to feel better. Behavior change in context of relationship. Sometimes you need to say no. It's not an act of aggression saying no when you cannot do it. And also you say yes when it's constructive to you. Practicing gratitude and cultivating joy. Some practice as 3 things that we are grateful for the day. And cultivating moments of joy, extremely powerful practice. Letting go of the past. Many people so much hold on the past. I did that, or I did that, or I didn't do that. I regret that. Let go, and start. And the last, not the least, and I recommend it to you very strongly, listening to teaching of compassion from the great master and great teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. I have his picture here. This is a great teacher of compassion, Thich Nhat Hanh. A little word about interpersonal impact. As I said, mindfulness and compassion do not only impact the person who practices them, they do impact the person, but they impact other people who are in relationship with them. What I'm seeing, for example, in mindful parenting, the parents practicing mindfulness and compassion and we are seeing positive impact on the children who did not practice mindfulness and compassion. So this is via the relationship. The nature and the quality of the relationship changes drastically in a way that it has impact on others. I want to leave you, sorry, I took a lot of time, sorry about that. I want to leave you with this word about you and the future. You are the future. I think most of you are very young. I'm happy to be with you today. And really, I want to give you this word that I know that you are living through hard times, COVID, facing the life of a young individual today in our society. But also, you are the future, so please don't give up. Please don't give up and stand for things that are important for you. Stand for ethics and stand for values. Stand with the Black Lives Matter. Stand with nature. Stand with the climate. Stand with ethics. Stand for things that matters for you and for the future. You are our future, so we need you and we trust you. Thanks, Eckhart. I will now invite, I will stop sharing and invite both David to come.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Bassam. Thank you so much, Bassam.
Too much time, but I wanted to finish.
It's okay. Well, I guess we'll get down to 5 questions or 3, depending on the time we have left. We're a little bit over the time, but I would just say thank you both. It was amazing, very interesting. Took a lot of notes, and already feel very relaxed. I think a short question that I thought was kind of funny and could start a conversation that maybe Bassam you can answer pretty quickly is: can meditation make someone too relaxed to the point where you would lose focus in one of your tasks?
Lose focus? Can you repeat the question if you don't mind?
Yeah. So the question would be, could meditation make you too relaxed, so way overboard, to the point where you can't focus anymore?
Yeah, depending again, as was showing in the phases of meditation, there's relaxation phase. So if you are caught in a way that you are very relaxed, yes, you can lose and can sleep even. You are not able to use this relaxation in a, for that we are talking about upright position. I'm not meditating like that. If not, most likely I will be sleeping. I'm in a position of awakening. So it's important that you are a bit stressing the quality of the body by being vertical. So when you are in this relaxation state, you are going towards concentration state. But it's possible some people feel bored, some people feel sleepy. I mean, it's not a action. It requires a practice to guide the mind towards a state of focus. For that, in the morning, from my own experience, it's much better. It's much easier. If I do it in the evening, I fell asleep. It happened to me. So
that's a good cue is to do it maybe earlier in the day.
Yeah, when you are in a state of awake, you need to be awake to meditate.
Okay, perfect. And so maybe like for both of you then, you talked about ability, skills, but I really wanted to touch point maybe on the difference between personality traits. So maybe you're born with certain types of characters that have an impact on certain behaviors. So how do you make the difference between personality traits, accepting who we are, and then dealing with our mental health and changing our behaviors? What's the difference between the two?
I mean, I see personality, and this is the approach I've always kind of abided by, is that personality is very difficult to change. And so that's why I wasn't talking so much about changing perfectionism, because that involves things like temperament, neuroticism, things that are, I think there's a strong biological component, versus things like stress, coping. Situations are much more dynamic and flexible than personality traits. So personality, I've never seen as something you change. It's something you modulate or you moderate with these compensatory mechanisms.
And so I think that brings me to maybe the question of awareness. How can you get knowledge about who you are and your personality, and realize that maybe there are things that you need to change in your behaviors, or you need to employ certain techniques to help regulate certain behaviors you develop negatively because of your personality, like you said, self-critical, to the point where it's too important, taking too much place in your life.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd mentioned we're doing this feedback intervention for that very reason, where we assess people daily, because often people they come to your office once a week and you ask them, well, how was your week? It's colored by biases, and so I think self-monitoring is very helpful for that, where people can see the changes, kind of that, like I was pointing out in the comparisons, when negative mood increases and decreases, and when positive mood increases, decreases. But yeah, I think that's a limitation of assessment, is which I think will become more prominent. Like self-monitoring will become more prominent now because it's a lot easier with technology and smartphones and that kind of thing. But and then people would just come up with their theories. They don't really understand people's distress and what makes them happy. So it's just left wide open for theories, whether it's medications or it's a brain disease. Whereas self-monitoring, everyone can become aware that these are complex, dynamic, but there's lots of opportunities for change.
Very good point. I have maybe a very pragmatic question for either one of you, but I think Bassam, you talked a little bit about it. So the question, it goes as follows. When anxiety is so strong that breathing is difficult, and that has happened during the night, what should the person do?
So the breathing feel very, very, very kind of heightened. When it is like that, I think the best thing to do, to find ways to be safe, to find a safety in the body, to find a place where they can be safer. So here, the breathing exercise might not be helpful. If anxiety is very heightened, and I didn't mention it, sometimes the breathing becomes almost towards panicky because the person is not able to breathe. So if trying to breathe, it might involve to a panic attack. So what would be is what you can find to kind feel safe in your body. Sometimes it's a blanket. Sometimes it's putting something on you, having an object that you like. It's talk about self-soothing strategies at that moment. It's extremely heightened anxiety. What is soothing for you? It's not about meditating here, it's about soothing. That only also with the idea of compassion. I'm not judging also, I'm feeling that. It's okay. I need to take care of myself. So that's the attitude that will help at that moment. Self-strategies are extremely important to have some strategies.
Perfect, thank you. So I will maybe give you two last questions. One, again, I think it might be a bit more targeted towards Bassam, but again, David, you can probably jump in a little bit, is to know the limits between self-love and self-pity. How do you know, because it's not always clear, and especially for people who are very self-critical, when they're letting themselves be compassionate towards themselves, they can feel like they're being too nice to themselves, or it's self-pity, or it's like an ego trip. So how do you make that difference? How do you know you're practicing self-love and otherwise practicing self-pity?
I would say it. I will maybe focus on the emotional tone. When you're practicing self-love, you feel warmth inside you. So it's not cognitive only. There's this warmth inside you. So when you are in the love, you are not in the pity. It's not the same emotion. So if you love someone, do you have pity towards them? So if you have hard time to feel the self-love, you can be able to feel it towards a child or friend, or maybe even a pet. Sometimes you have that. If you have it towards you, there is nothing pity about. So the feeling is different. That I would invite people to try to be able to differentiate these feelings. And I'll let Dave give his best effort on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. That is an important distinction to self-kindness versus self-pity.
And so maybe last question, sorry, there are so many, so I guess we can do a second webinar and where we'll do only questions.
No problem.
Those ones would be, what is your favorite book, meditation, mindfulness, or enlightenment? Do you have a top 5? And so both of you can answer that question, although meditation might be more for Bassam, but I'm sure, David, you have some input there too.
Yeah, I mean, I've done mindfulness trainings, and honestly, I do more informal. You know, so I mentioned, you know, I have a Fitbit that keeps track of my pulse. So during the day, I kind of pay attention to my breath while I'm sitting at my computer. I talked about non-reactivity. In evenings, we go for walks a lot around the neighborhood and just feeling the senses, the smells, feelings. Yeah, I mean, I'm more research, so I wonder. I'm on my computer a lot, so I could, and alone with my thoughts, as my wife will say. She's a clinician, and she's with people all the time, and so I add another 45 minutes of meditation by myself. I think it's an individual preferences thing.
Absolutely.
But I see the value. Certainly, people that are more go and around people all day, they don't have a moment to themselves. So.
What about you, Bassam? Maybe
So which practices? The question is which practices I do? Is it that? I'm trying.
No, the question is, what book would you recommend on meditation, mindfulness, or enlightenment?
What book?
I must have missed the question entirely then. I didn't hear that, sorry.
No, it was still answering it pretty well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, certainly, maybe one of the best writers in that would be John Kabat-Zinn. He has many books. I mean, you can look at his books. There's multiple books from John Kabat-Zinn. Certainly, in compassion, I would say works from Thich Nhat Hanh would be beautiful. There is a lot. So it's hard for me to choose. I mean, depending. Yeah. Much more academic and much more hard to read. Some of them are much simpler. Like, John Kabat-Zinn, certainly in mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh in compassion. These are big names that inspired me as a person.
So I think that leaves a good introduction for people to then do their own research. I will, as we reach the 15 minutes after the webinar, I will close the webinar, and just wanted to thank you both again for your generosity in time and knowledge. Everyone who attended and listened, thank you so much. And please know that the slides will come in a separate email where you will be able to also watch the webinar and read the slides as you want to. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you all very much, and all the best.